My neighbor's wife is missing, and I think I know where she is." The leaves were the color of rust and dried blood, clinging desperately to the branches before the wind finally ripped them away. It was a pretty picture, the kind you see on postcards, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong in our little corner of suburbia. Maybe it was just the season, the way the light faded so early, leaving long, distorted shadows that played tricks on your eyes. Or maybe it was Emily Thompson's disappearance. She vanished a week ago. One day, she was watering her petunias, chatting with Mrs. Henderson across the street. The next, gone. Mark, her husband, told everyone she'd gone for a jog and never came back. He plastered missing posters with her smiling face all over the neighborhood. Perfectly normal, grieving husband stuff. Except, I didn't believe it. I live alone since Tom's accident. It leaves you with a lot of quiet time to observe. And I'd been observing Mark Thompson for a while. He was always a little too slick, too eager to please. The kind of guy who offered to help carry your groceries, but you could see his eyes flicking towards your purse. He and Emily seemed happy enough, the kind of couple who held hands while walking the dog. But I'd noticed a change in Emily these last few weeks. She'd stopped smiling, her eyes were shadowed, and she seemed to flinch whenever Mark touched her. The police, led by Officer Davies, were treating it as a missing persons case. Davies was tired, his face etched with the weariness of dealing with petty crimes and domestic disputes. He listened to Mark's story, nodded sympathetically, and promised to do everything he could. When I tried to tell him about the change in Emily, he just gave me a pitying look. "Mrs. Miller, I understand you're concerned, but we have no reason to suspect foul play. People go missing all the time. She probably just needed a break." "A break? From what? Her life?" I didn't think so. That night, I had the dream again. I'd been having it every night since Emily disappeared. It was always the same. I was standing in Mark's backyard, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves. A dark, gaping hole yawned open in the ground, and I knew with chilling certainty that Emily was down there. It wasn't a dream, not really. It felt more like a memory, a glimpse into something real, something hidden. The next morning, I found myself staring out my kitchen window, watching Mark. He was pacing around his backyard, talking on his phone. He kept glancing towards the old root cellar, a crumbling stone structure half hidden by overgrown ivy. It had been there since the house was built decades ago. Everyone said it was just a relic, filled with cobwebs and forgotten junk. But in my dream, that's where Emily was. I started paying closer attention to Mark. I watched him from my windows, followed him when he went to the store, even drove past his house late at night. I know it sounds crazy, like something out of a bad movie, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was the only one who knew the truth. He was acting off. He was too calm, too composed. He mowed the lawn, smiled at the neighbors, and continued his life as if nothing had happened. But I saw the cracks in his facade. The way his hands trembled when he lit a cigarette, the way he jumped at sudden noises, the way he avoided looking at the root cellar. One evening, I was at the grocery store when I saw Mark buying heavy-duty trash bags and a shovel. He looked pale and nervous, and when he saw me, he quickly turned away. It was a small thing, but it confirmed my suspicions. He was hiding something. That night, I couldn't sleep. The dream was more vivid than ever, the smell of damp earth and decay filling my nostrils. I tossed and turned, my heart pounding in my chest. I had to do something. I couldn't just sit by and watch while Emily was, wherever she was. Around 2 a.m., I slipped out of my house and crept across the lawn towards Mark's property. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, and the air was cold and damp. The only sound was the rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. As I got closer to the root cellar, I noticed a faint smell, something sickly sweet and metallic. My stomach churned. I reached for the heavy wooden door, my hand trembling. It was locked. I rummaged in my bag for a hairpin, remembering a trick my grandmother had taught me. After a few minutes of fumbling, I heard a click. The door creaked open, revealing a dark, musty interior. The smell was overpowering now, thick and cloying. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing a scene that made my blood run cold. The root cellar was filled with dirt and debris, old jars and broken tools. But in the center of the room, there was a freshly dug hole. And at the bottom of the hole, I saw something that made me gasp. It was a hand. A pale, lifeless hand with a familiar silver ring on the ring finger. Emily's ring. I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest. I had to get out of there. I had to call the police. But as I turned to leave, I heard a noise behind me. The door slammed shut. I whirled around, my flashlight beam dancing wildly. Mark was standing there, his face pale and twisted. He was holding a shovel. "Sarah," he said, his voice low and menacing, "you shouldn't have come here." I tried to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. I raised my phone, trying to call for help, but he lunged at me, knocking the phone from my hand. It clattered to the floor, the flashlight beam spinning uselessly. We struggled in the darkness, the smell of damp earth and decay filling my lungs. He was stronger than I thought, his grip like iron. I clawed at his face, trying to get away, but he pushed me back against the wall. "Why, Mark?" I gasped. "Why did you do it?" He didn't answer. He just raised the shovel. I closed my eyes, bracing for the impact. But then, I heard a scream, a high-pitched, terrified scream. It wasn't me. I opened my eyes. Emily was standing in the doorway, her face pale and streaked with dirt. She was holding a rusty garden trowel, her eyes wide with horror. "Mark!" she screamed again. "Stop it!" Mark froze, his face contorted with a mixture of fear and rage. He lowered the shovel, his eyes fixed on Emily. "Emily," he whispered, "what are you doing here?" I escaped," she stammered. "I heard you. I saw you." She didn't finish the sentence. Mark dropped the shovel and lunged at her, grabbing her by the arm. "Get back in there," he snarled. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the shovel and swung it with all my might. It connected with Mark's head with a sickening thud. He crumpled to the ground, unconscious. Emily and I stared at each other in stunned silence. The only sound was the dripping of water and the distant hoot of an owl. The police came quickly. Officer Davies looked shocked and relieved. He arrested Mark and took Emily to the hospital. I gave my statement, trying to make sense of the night's events. It turned out that Mark had been keeping Emily locked in the root cellar for weeks. He'd been abusing her, both physically and mentally. She'd finally managed to escape while he was out buying groceries. She'd hidden in the woods, waiting for a chance to get help. The news reported that Mark had been charged with kidnapping, assault, and attempted murder. He pleaded not guilty, claiming that Emily was mentally unstable and had made everything up. But the evidence was overwhelming. Emily recovered, slowly but surely. She moved away, to a place where Mark could never find her. I never saw her again. Mark was eventually convicted and sentenced to life in prison. But even behind bars, he haunted me. I still had the dream, the smell of damp earth and decay lingering in my nostrils. Sometimes, I wonder if I really saved Emily, or if I just opened a door to something darker, something I didn't understand. A few months later, I was cleaning out the attic when I found an old photo album. It belonged to the previous owners of my house. I flipped through the pages looking at pictures of a young couple, smiling and carefree. And then, I saw a picture that made my blood run cold. It was a picture of the husband, standing in front of the root cellar. He looked exactly like Mark Thompson. The caption underneath the picture read, "John, tending to his little garden project." John. That was the name Mrs. Henderson had mentioned, the name of the previous owner who had mysteriously disappeared years ago. I closed the photo album, my hands trembling. I knew then that I hadn't just saved Emily. I'd stumbled upon something much older, something much more sinister. And I knew, with chilling certainty, that it wasn't over. It would never be over. The leaves are changing again, turning the color of rust and dried blood. The days are getting shorter, and the shadows are growing longer. I keep the doors locked, the windows closed. I check the locks every night before I go to bed. I still have the dream. And sometimes, when I'm standing in my backyard, I can smell the damp earth and decaying leaves. And I know he's still out there, watching. waiting. The garden needs weeding. I'll have to tend to it tomorrow.